Prince Harry has reportedly invited the King to the Invictus Games next year in a bid to publicly heal their rift. Now, Bryony, you've actually spent time with Prince Harry. Do you think their relationship, after everything that's happened, can be saved? I hope so, but...
I think their yeah, absolutely. And I think, listen, I don't know about you, Josie, Paddy, Sonia, but if my family were put under the microscope that the royals are put under, it would be absolute car crash. Yeah. So I always think, no, mine too. But I always think, so, look, I've worked on and off with Prince Harry for 10 years in terms of mental health work and stuff. I've been to Montecito when Spare came out to talk about that book. And I think sometimes the people were very harsh and said that he was very harsh in the book about what it was like being a royal. Actually, what I think is that over the last few decades, we've spent ages going, what's it like to be a royal? What's it like to be a royal? And he wrote a book where he told us what it was like to be a royal. And we don't like this. We don't want to hear this. We don't want to hear this stuff. So all he's done, I think he was a truth teller, trying to be a cycle breaker, take of that what you will. But I also think that Charles and him are, I think they've always had this sort of like quite a close relationship that was perhaps strained. Well, it was definitely strained. But I think that obviously he went to Highgrove last month with the kids so that the King met with Archie and Lilibet for the first time since they were tiny.
Oh, so King Charles has met the children now?
Yeah.
Right,
so
okay.
they visited on their visit last month. They visited, and then Harry's actually coming back to London next month for the annual Well Child Awards, which he always comes to. And apparently he's accepted an offer from his father to stay at Buckingham Palace. So, which obviously there was a lot of sort of drama about that. And the fact that the offer was withdrawn because it took too, I don't know, there's a lot of drama, right? But I think we all would love to see the King at the Invictus Games. I think the Invictus Games are amazing. And I think what Prince Harry's involvement in it is amazing.
And to meet his grandchildren after all those time, you think, oh, all those years that I've been missing out on, look at them. I mean, how old are they now?
They must be...
He's missed out on a good few years. He's missed out on a good few years, hasn't he?
It's FaceTime. You don't have to see them. You can just get on the phone, FaceTime me. You don't know what's gone. You never know. The royals have got a few quid.
Yeah, they've definitely got FaceTime. They've got Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got,
I really hope they can sort this out. I really do.
Yeah.
I miss Harry.
I love Harry. Harry's great. He's exactly what he says on the tin. That's Harry. Do you know what I mean? And I think we need a bit of lightness. The royals have had a tough few years. Some might say that it's because of Harry, but I would say it's more to do with the man formerly known as Prince Andrew.
I don't think it's Harry anymore.
Well, yeah, but like the tabloids do often say it is.
Yeah.
Actually,
they love that, don't they?
He's a king. He's a prince. He's great. You see him at the Well Child Awards at Invictus. We saw him last month. He was with Alison on this show, wasn't he? Yeah. And that's what he does best.
Today, we're looking at a segment from this morning that felt genuinely refreshing because Bryony Gordon did what so few people in British media are willing to do. She spoke about Prince Harry with warmth, fairness, and actual knowledge of the man. You just heard her. She has worked with Harry on and off for 10 years around mental health. She has been to Montecito. She has seen him up close. And in this conversation, she defended him clearly, pushed back on the usual narratives, and treated him like a human being instead of a permanent villain. That alone is worth marking. Before we go further, one important note. The report that Harry has invited King Charles to the Invictus Games next year is still just that, a report. Harry himself has not confirmed it. We should be careful not to treat speculation as fact. What we can talk about is everything else that was said in the segment, because Bryony covered a lot of ground, and most of it was rooted in things we already know to be true. Let's start with the tone, because the tone is the story here. Bryony did not approach Harry as a problem to be managed or a source of endless drama. She spoke about him as someone she respects and likes. I love Harry, she said. Harry's great. He's exactly what he says on the tin. That kind of straightforward affection is rare in mainstream British television when the subject is the Duke of Sussex. Most panels treat him as a disruption. Bryony treated him like a person who has been through an extraordinary amount of pressure and still shows up for the work that matters to him. She also made a point that cuts through years of selective memory. The public and the media spent decades asking, what is it really like to be a royal? Harry wrote a book that answered the question, and a large part of the reaction was outrage that the answer was not more flattering. Bryony called him a truth teller and a cycle breaker. You do not have to agree with every word in Spare to recognize the honesty of that observation. People demanded the reality. When they received it, many decided they preferred the myth. That pattern is familiar. Harry is criticized for silence and criticized for speaking. He is criticized for staying and criticized for leaving. He is criticized for protecting his mental health and criticized for being too open about it. Bryony has watched this long enough to see the bind for what it is. Her refusal to join the pylon felt deliberate and earned. She also addressed the relationship with King Charles directly. She believes it can be saved. She noted that they have always had a closeness that became strained, and she pointed to concrete steps: the visit to Highgrove last month where Charles met Archie and Lilibet again, and the fact that Harry has accepted an offer to stay at the palace when he returns for the Well-Child Awards. These are not abstract hopes. They are practical movements in the direction of contact. The meeting between the king and his grandchildren matters. For years, the narrative has been that the rift is total and permanent. The reality, as Bryony laid out, is more complicated. Charles has now spent time with Archie and Lilibet. Harry is returning to London for an event he has long supported. An offer of accommodation at the palace was made and, according to this report, accepted. None of this erases the difficult history. It does suggest that channels remain open in ways the most hostile coverage prefers to ignore. Bryony was careful not to pretend everything is resolved. She acknowledged the strain. She acknowledged the drama around the palace stay earlier, but she refused to treat the relationship as beyond repair. That refusal is itself a form of pushback against a media culture that often seems invested in the permanent fracture. Then there is the Invictus question. The report claims Harry wants to invite his father to the games next year as a public step toward healing. Again, Harry has not confirmed this. We should hold that distinction clearly. What we can say is that Invictus remains one of the clearest expressions of Harry's post-royal purpose. The games are about service, recovery, and the community of wounded veterans. Bryony called them amazing and said Harry's involvement is amazing. That is not spin. That is recognition of work that has always sat at the center of his public life, long before the royal exit and long after it. If an invitation to the king eventually happens, it would be consistent with the pattern of small, practical steps rather than grand, theatrical reconciliations. Harry has tended to move in that register, showing up for the Well-Child Awards, bringing the children to see their grandfather. The media often prefers bigger, more dramatic storylines. The actual relationship appears to be proceeding in quieter increments. Bryony also did something else that deserves attention. When the conversation turned to the difficulties the royal family has faced in recent years, she declined to place the primary blame on Harry. She pointed instead toward Andrew. That's a significant departure from the default tabloid script, which has spent years treating Harry as the central source of institutional trouble. Bryony simply refused the frame. The tabloids may love the Harry as problem narrative, she suggested, but it is not the most accurate one available. This is the value of having someone on the sofa who has actually spent time with Harry over a decade. She is not working from briefings or secondhand outrage. She has seen the mental health work. She has been to Montecito. She has watched him in the settings where he is most himself, around the Well-Child Awards, around Invictus, around the causes he has carried for years. When she says he is exactly what it says on the tin, she is speaking from direct experience rather than from the manufactured version that dominates so much coverage. There is a loneliness that can come with being the member of a family who tells the truth about the family. Bryony's comments about Spare touched on that. The public asked for the reality of royal life. Harry provided a version of it. The response was not gratitude for the honesty, it was punishment for breaking the spell. Cycle breakers rarely receive immediate applause. They receive resistance. Bryony naming him as someone trying to break cycles was a more generous and more accurate reading than most of what we hear. She also pushed back, gently but clearly, on the idea that Harry is the reason the royals have had a tough few years. The alternative explanation she offered, Andrew, is sitting in plain sight for anyone willing to look. The fact that it still feels notable when someone on daytime television says it out loud tells you how thoroughly the other narrative has been protected. The personal warmth in the discussion about the grandchildren is striking. I love Harry. Harry's great. I miss Harry. These are not the words of someone performing balance. They are the words of someone who has decided that the relentless negativity has gone far enough. In a media environment that often treats basic fairness towards Harry as disloyalty to the institution, her stance stands out. We should also note the ordinary humanity in the discussion about the grandchildren. Charles has missed years with Archie and Lilibet. FaceTime exists, as the panel joked, and the family certainly has the means to use it. But physical presence is different. The Highgrove visit allowed the king to see the children in person again. That is not a solution to every difficulty in the wider family. It is still a meaningful moment for the people involved. Bryony treated it as such, without the usual layers of suspicion or score settling. Harry's forthcoming return for the Well-Child Awards fits the same pattern of continuity. He has supported that cause for a long time. He shows up. The reported acceptance of a stay at Buckingham Palace, if accurate, removes one piece of the logistical and symbolic friction that has surrounded previous visits. None of this is a full repair. It is evidence that repair remains possible in increments.
The larger context is important. Harry has spent years being told that any attempt at contact is manipulative, that any distance is proof of permanent estrangement, and that any public work is a bid for attention. Bryony's reading is simpler and kinder. He is doing the work he has always done. He is trying to maintain some form of relationship with his father, and he is still the same person she has known through the mental health campaigning. That continuity is often erased in coverage that needs him to be either a villain or a tragedy. She allowed him to be a person. There's also an implicit challenge in her comments to the rest of the media. If someone who has worked with Harry for a decade can speak about him with this level of straightforward respect, the more hostile coverage starts to look less like inevitable truth and more like a choice. The choice to center every story on conflict, the choice to ignore the causes he continues to serve, the choice to treat his children as acceptable subjects for speculation while claiming to care about family. Bryony did not lecture the panel. She simply modeled a different approach. Sometimes that is more effective. The reported Invictus invitation, even as unconfirmed speculation, fits the broader picture she painted. Invictus is Harry's clearest public legacy project. Inviting his father would be a gesture that links the personal and the purposeful. Whether or not it happens, the fact that it is being discussed at all suggests that some people on both sides are still looking for workable next steps rather than permanent stalemate. We will wait for actual confirmation from Harry before treating it as real. Until then, it remains a report. The rest of what Bryony said does not. She closed the segment by returning to what Harry does best, the Well-Child Awards, Invictus, the work that sits at the center of his public life. In a media culture that prefers to keep him locked in the royal drama frame, her insistence on the work itself felt like a corrective.
Harry is not only the sum of his family conflicts, he is also the person who built and sustained Invictus, who keeps showing up for seriously ill children, and who has tried to speak honestly about mental health from inside a system that rarely rewards honesty. That is the version of Harry Bryony was defending. Not a perfect man, not a man without regrets or rough edges, just a man who has been under extraordinary pressure, who told a version of the truth as he experienced it, and who continues to do the work that mattered to him before the exit and after it. In the current climate, simply saying that out loud on national television is a form of resistance. We can hold more than one thing at once. The relationship with Charles is strained and still capable of small movements toward contact. Spare was painful for many people to read, and also an attempt at honesty that the culture had spent years requesting. Harry left the institution and still returns for the causes he has long supported. The media prefers simple villains and simple reconciliations. Real families, even royal ones, tend to move in more complicated ways. Bryony Gordon has spent enough time with Harry to be comfortable with that complexity. Her comments on This Morning offered a version of him that felt recognizable to those of us who have been paying attention beyond the headlines. She did not erase the difficulties. She simply refused to let the difficulties become the only story. That is why the segment stood out, not because it solved anything, but because it treated Prince Harry as a full person rather than a permanent problem. In the current media environment, that still counts as something worth noting. If Bryony's comments resonated with you the way they did with many of us, tell me in the comments which part landed hardest: her defense of Spare, the warmth toward Harry himself, the refusal to blame him for every royal difficulty, or the simple reminder that he keeps showing up for the work. I am interested in what stood out to you. I'll see you in the next one. Smiley here, and take care.